the sun shining bright forever. Have your fears and your pain gone away. Here on earth it feels like everything good is missing since you left. And here on earth everything's different. There's an emptiness. Oh, I hope you're dancing in the sky, and I hope you're singing in the angels' choir. I hope the angels know what they have out there. It's so nice up in heaven since you arrived. Now tell me, what do you do up in heaven? All your days filled with love and light. Is there music? Is there art and invention? Tell me, are you happy? Are you more alive? 'Cause here on earth it feels like everything good is missing since you left. And here on earth everything's different. There's an emptiness. Oh, I hope you're dancing in the sky, and I hope you're singing in the angels' choir, and I hope the angels know what they have out there. So nice up in heaven since you arrived, since you arrived.
Welcome to another MJA News Spot. This podcast is coming to you from our Plattsburgh, New York home office. My name is Mark, and I am your host for tonight's podcast. This is MJA News Spot Part 8. MJA October 2018 Operations. MJA Inc. Investigations New York staff will arrive in Indiana to meet our Indiana staff to work on several of our cases. We will arrive in Indiana on October 7th, 2018, and we will leave Indiana on October 22nd, 2018. MJA will be staying at the France State Park campgrounds outside of Logansport, Indiana until the 19th. The other 2 nights will be spent at my daughter's. October 2018 MJA Operations. MJA Inc. Investigations will be working on the following cases. Case 1, missing 35-year-old white female, Karen Jo Smith. Karen Jo Smith went missing on December 27th in the year 2000 from Indianapolis, Indiana, located in Marion County. MJA contacted the victim's family and offered our services. An agreement was reached, and less than 3 months later, MJA met Karen Jo Smith's family at a public diner in Indianapolis, Indiana. Karen Jo Smith became our very first case on June 1st, 2001. Karen Jo Smith's family and MJA knew that our main suspect in the disappearance of Karen Jo was the ex-husband, Steve Halcomb. After the suspect, Steve Halcomb, had fled Indiana twice, headed west, he was caught the last time in Denver, Colorado, at a rescue mission. Halcomb was so desperate that he used his real ID to get a job from the rescue mission. Halcomb was arrested for the murder of Karen Jo Smith, and he was convicted without a body. Halcomb was sentenced to 95 years. Karen Jo Smith has never been found. Case 2. The unsolved homicides of Tony and Lois Tolson. They were found murdered on February 22, 1987 in Cass County, Indiana, outside of the town of Logansport, Indiana. The married couple and their car was discovered on Kokomo Pike after crossing 300 South outside of Logansport, Indiana, located in Cass County. They were driving from Burlington, Indiana, some 17 miles away from where the murdered couple was discovered. It was snowy and cold but drivable. The Tolsons were shot and then their car was set on fire. The evidence: Tony Tolson had stopped his car in the road for some reason. His window was down and he was shot in the head. Lois Tolson was shot in the shoulder trying to exit the vehicle, and then she was shot in the head. When the car was set on fire, it exploded, and a couple watching TV in their home a few hundred feet away heard the explosion and rushed outside. They found Lois Tolson outside of the car in a snowy ditch and pulled her away from the fire, not knowing she was already dead. Lois Tolson was 8.5 months pregnant. There are 2 main suspects in the murders, but they have never been charged in the killings. But later, the 2 main suspects were convicted on unrelated drug charges and was sentenced to long prison terms. Investigators were hoping this would lead to new evidence to gain an arrest and convictions on the murders. But so far, no one has come forward with the info needed. In 2010, the Tolson's surviving child asked the Cass County Sheriff's Department to reopen the case. A new investigation begun. It's with a heavy heart that I talk about this case, because Tony and Lois were friends of mine, and were friends with 3 other of our family members. I have known Lois since a freshman in high school. Another twist to this case: 2 of the principal players in the conspiracy to kill the married couple, I busted them in 1984 making undercover drug buys while wired for sound, and 2 undercover weapons buys for the Kokomo Police Department. My handler was the late Jack Adams, starting in 1981. After the Tolsons' death, it was a shock for me to learn that Tony and Lois knew these people. With that being said, this is why we have been working on the case, because it's close to our hearts, and we know all the people that could be involved. Case 3. The unsolved homicide of James David Freshire. Mr. Freshire was found murdered in July 1985 in his home on East Linden Avenue in Logansport, Indiana. The case profile and reading the crime scene, the evidence states the killing was personal in nature, for it was clear robbery wasn't the motive. There are 3 possible suspects in the murder of Mr. Freshire, and MJA feels one of those suspects could be ruled out. A police informant went deep undercover and worked on the case for 3 years, becoming close friends to one of the suspects. The informant and the suspect hung out together every week, several times a week. The police informant, some 3 years later, would tell his handlers that this suspect wasn't the killer. Then there was 2 suspects left. No evidence has surfaced to make an arrest or get a conviction, and the investigation continues. That police informant was me. After my undercover work was done in Kokomo, Indiana, until court dates were set, I moved to Logansport, Indiana to work undercover for the Logansport Police Department. Case 4. I am the undercover agent who recovered a small refrigerator that was stolen by teenagers from the Logansport Memorial Hospital lab when it was unattended. In that refrigerator was chemotherapy drugs for cancer patients. Being in the hands of teenagers, there was a fear that the teenagers would think it's drugs that could get them high. That would have been instant death. My briefing on the case, I was told that these teenagers involved had a little clique of 50 people, so a lot of lives could be at stake. In the first 27 hours, I made contact with the teenage suspects. My orders from my police handlers was tell the suspects what they had stole, and it wasn't going to get them high, and it was instant death if they tried. My orders went on as followed. No one will be prosecuted if they just turn over the refrigerator with its contents, which was 1,700 vials of different types of chemotherapy cancer drugs. A deal was made, and 44 hours later, I recovered the refrigerator and its contents on a school playground in the darkness. 1 hour later, the Logansport Police Department came to my safe house and took custody of the refrigerator. My charge for this case was $0. I wasn't going to charge for my services concerning a case of this nature. It was my civic duty when lives were at risk. The search for James David Freshire's killer continues. Case 5. Missing 16-year-old white female, Wendy L. Felton. This 16-year-old went missing on June 4th, 1987 from Marion, Indiana, located in Grant County. Felton's sister drove her parents to the airport, and when she came back home, Wendy Felton had disappeared. If police have any suspects in her disappearance, they haven't made it clear that they do. Miss Felton hasn't been found. There have been suspects, but not publicly named. But there were 3 suspects known for crimes like these worked in the area at the time of Miss Felton's disappearance. MJA thinks that Larry D. Hall is the prime suspect in this case. Items found in Hall's van when he was arrested has led MJA to search an area in the Indiana State Park because it was written down on a little pad of paper found in Hall's van. Hall liked to camp off-road deep into the woods in state parks, which fits what he's looking for. It is a county over from Hall's home. Hall was arrested in 1994 for the kidnapping of Jessica Roach of Georgetown, Illinois. Jessica was found murdered in a cornfield near Perrysville, Indiana, in the autumn of 1983. Some investigators believe Hall, who traveled the country as a Civil War reenactment buff, may be responsible for the disappearance and deaths of as many as 40 women and girls. Hall drove a van constantly, and in many cases, he stalked his victims. Case 6. Missing Brandy Nicole Wilson, 24-year-old white female, a mother of 2 boys. Vanished without a trace on June 4th, 2002 from Colfax, Indiana, located in Clinton County, Indiana, near the Frankfort, Indiana area. Mrs. Wilson was last seen at her home by her husband. Police didn't find anything in the home or on the property that suggested foul play. A small shed outside the back door of their home. police canines got a death odor hit on the shed, suggesting Mrs. Wilson was stored in the shed or evidence linked to her. MJA saw firsthand the work Clinton County was doing to solve the Wilson case. Jane Doe found in Kentucky, July 2005. Evidence suggests she was bound and gagged. Might have been in the location 2 to 15 years. In the twist of events, Brandy Wilson's dental records were turned over by the Clinton County, Indiana Sheriff's Department to compare with the Kentucky Jane Doe. No match. Brandy Wilson hasn't been located. Case 7, missing, Shannon Turner, 33-year-old white female. Turner went missing on December 4th, 1997 from Indianapolis, Indiana, located in Marion County. Miss Turner was employed as an exotic dancer at Babe's Showgirls West. She left her place of employment, possibly with an ex-boyfriend, David Mays. David Mays was an enforcer in the outlaw motorcycle gang. Searches in October 2003 in Perry Township failed to locate Turner's body on the property with suspected links to the outlaws motorcycle gang, whom Turner's boyfriend was the main enforcer. Mays is the prime suspect in Miss Turner's disappearance. Mays was found not guilty in a federal trial for murdering Miss Turner, but there are other charges that the state of Indiana can still charge Mays with. Miss Turner has not been found. Let's take a pause for the cause, and we'll be back in a moment with our MJ News Spot, Part 8, October 2018, MJA Operations. Let's take a pause for the cause. MJA would like to give a special shout out to the Corbin Connection on YouTube. Mr. Corbin is a very funny man with his 3 alter egos. Once again, that's the Corbin Connection on YouTube. Thank you. Now back to our MJA podcast. This is our MJA News Spot Part 8, October 2018, MJA Operations. The next case is Case 8, missing, Shannon Marie Sherrill, 6 years old. Shannon Sherrill was abducted on October 5th, 1986 from Thorntown, Indiana, located in Boone County. The 6-year-old Shannon was playing in her family's yard with several other children at the time she disappeared. A 3-day ground, air, and canine search followed, but Shannon was not found. When MJA met with Mike and Becky Sherrill the first time, our goal was set in stone. Beyond anything else, our goal was to locate Shannon Sherrill. The Sherrill family and MJA started their investigation into the disappearance of Shannon Sherrill. Shannon's case was ruled a stranger abduction. Mike and Becky Sherrill and MJA always knew there was a Texas connection because the state of Texas requested Shannon's parents' DNA. What our investigation uncovered is just chilling. It started when an Ohio inmate wrote a letter in December 2005 claiming he had solid info concerning the Shannon Sherrill case. MJA and a Kokomo Tribune reporter broke the case wide open in June 2006. We were able to get the Ohio inmate's name who wrote the letter in December 2005, which led to 1980s child serial killer David E. Penton. I was invited by the Ohio prison investigator to come and interview this inmate who wrote the letter, which I did, and I have interviewed him several times since. The Ohio inmate letter writer was a cellmate with Penton for 5 years. The info this inmate provided could only have come from the killer. The Ohio inmate for the last 2 years had worked with Texas law enforcement and helped get them 3 convictions against Penton in Texas that were cold cases that happened in the 1980s. A Texas detective told me to take this Ohio inmate seriously. The icing on the cake is 2 other former cellmates with Penton in other states told investigators what Penton had said and gave the same details on the Shannon Sherrill case and others. We turned all this info over to the Indiana State Police. During their investigations, they confirmed our info. We also know during the police investigation, they traveled to several states to verify a lot of the info. Penton started killing in Texas during December 1983, and his killings ended in Ohio in April 1988. While being on the run, Penton made round trips 4 times, killing along the way. Penton would change his route each trip. Penton used small state highways, back roads leading to most of his abductions happened in one-street-like towns. Penton is being looked at as a possible suspect covering 17 states. Shannon Sherrill has never been found. We do have a search area that once started as a 30-mile area. By more interviews with the Ohio inmate, we have narrowed it down to an 8.5-mile search area. Case 9, missing. Julia Dalton Johnson, 29 years old. The 29-year-old vanished without a trace on March 1st, 1991 from Kokomo, Indiana, located in Howard County. Johnson was last seen at her residence in Howard County, Indiana on March 1st, 1991. She took her kids to a movie, drove them home to the Kokomo Regency Trailer Court, Space 250, put them to bed, and disappeared. She has 4 children. Her light blue citation vehicle was found. It was locked and in working order, abandoned on Route 22 the following day on March 2, 1991, approximately 3 miles from her home. Authorities suspect foul play was involved in Johnson's disappearance. MJA has conducted searches for Julie Dalton Johnson in Howard, Miami, Grant, and Wabash counties. Julie Dalton Johnson hasn't been found. Case 10. The unsolved murder of 16-year-old Jason Dale Bolton. Bolton's body was found in Franklin and Fayette County, Laurel, Indiana on August 21st, 1991. First look at the crime scene and eyewitness statements makes everything look like Jason was laying in the road and a vehicle ran him over. During our investigation, the evidence states that Jason was killed by childhood friends after leaving a party. These so-called friends made Jason's death look like an accident with the help from one of the suspect's father, claiming he was driving the car that ran Jason over. Jason Dale Bolton's family and many others believe with all our hearts Jason was not only murdered, but that parts of his privates were cut off and his body was mutilated in other ways as well. The coroner reports show this ever so clearly, matching the hand-sketched drawings of the first officer on the scene had done. In the drawing, there was an object circled across the road near a ditch labeled testicles. Jason's killer ran him over to hide their crime. They were trying to make it look like an accident. The police bought into it. We shared this case file with other investigators, and they stated that Jason's death was staged to look like an accident. Jason's injuries didn't support accidental death by being ran over by a vehicle. Through the years, the witnesses have changed their stories. If you are telling the truth, why does your story change? Case 11. The unsolved homicide of Nancy Lyons. Lyons disappeared on June 17, 2002 from Rush County, Indiana. Her remains was found on October 2002 in Bartholomew County. Her vehicle, a red 1993 Nissan, was found nearly 13 miles away on County Road 700 West and County Road 500 North with a flat left rear tire. Lyons' vehicle was found, the engine was running, the car lights were on, and numerous personal belongings were still inside the vehicle. MJA has already formed some ideas because of where Nancy Lyons was seen alive and the way her body was found and the location where her body was found. Many times these are factors that can lead you in the right direction and lead you to a suspect. As it stands now, we have one leading suspect and a possible partner in crime. We do have two eyewitness accounts that our leading suspect didn't drive his usual route right after Nancy Lyons disappeared. His cell phone was shut off during this time. Our opinion is that her car was staged to look like it had a flat tire to throw investigators off, or maybe to buy time before anybody might have started looking for Lyons. Case 12. Missing Jackie Lee Berry Jr., who vanished without a trace on December 16, 2008 from Terre Haute, Indiana, located in Vigo County, Indiana. Mr. Berry went to a friend's house and was never seen again. Mr. Berry's van was found parked near the Wabash River a few days later. Police, along with K-9 units, searched a portion of the Wabash River but turned up nothing. The 33-year-old Mr. Berry is assumed deceased. The friend Mr. Berry went to see on that day, Mr. Berry vanished without a trace, was later tried for Mr. Berry's murder but was found not guilty. Mr. Berry's body has never been located. Case 13. Missing Ashley Morris Mullis. The 27-year-old female, a mother of three, vanished without a trace on September 19, 2013 from Royington, Indiana, located in Delaware County, Indiana. The 27-year-old was separated from her husband, who is the father of two of the children. Ashley Morris Mullis was last seen by her boyfriend Dan York's family. Ashley and Dan York had a female child together. York was married. When Ashley disappeared, it wasn't long before York and his wife took the female child to live in Florida. Dan York, the father of the child, is now deceased, and somehow the Florida courts allowed the surviving wife to adopt the female child. Ashley's family was never notified about the adoption. The blood relation to the female child wasn't contacted, and a stranger is allowed to adopt the child. Our search for the female child and her mother, Ashley Morris Mullis, continues. This trip will also be a fact-finding mission concerning these cases. Missing Elizabeth Ann Gill, who was 2 years 10 months old when she was abducted on June 13, 1965 from Missouri. unsolved homicide of Dennis Newsom in 1981 in Howard County, Indiana, and found in Tipton County, Indiana in 1982. Missing Bonnie L. Schultz, 47-year-old white female, vanished without a trace on July 3, 1997 from Indianapolis, Indiana, located in Marion County. Missing Margaret A. Hayes, a 22-year-old white female, disappeared on March 10, 1977 from Bloomington, Indiana, located in Monroe County. There are cases where our Indiana and New York staff will be meeting the victim's family. Now a word from our co-host of the MJA podcast, the series Deep in the Woods.
Hello, my name is Paula Pan. I will be one of the co-hosts on the MJA Inc. Investigations podcast on YouTube. I am a military spouse for the past 35 years and mother of 5. In my secular career, I held the position of webmaster for my local county government. I was responsible for approximately 9,000 plus web pages, coding, designing, maintaining, and preparing and executing massive amounts of data content for dissemination from all county governmental departments daily. In addition to maintaining data within numerous databases, I became attracted to missing persons and cold cases out of necessity 13 years ago because my 25-year-old son disappeared without a trace. He does have known drug addiction issues. For those that have faced the same situation, you will understand that there is really nothing a parent can do when your child is an adult. The only recourse that I had was to file a missing person report, and from that point forward, I truly was on my own. The only way that law enforcement would intervene and assist is if there was a reason to believe that foul play was involved, which is not the case. I opted to broaden my horizons by gaining additional education in the field of private investigation by means of a military spouse scholarship. I attended online college for 1 year with the hope that by obtaining investigative skills, it would assist me in locating my own son. Upon completion, I was awarded a career certification as a private investigator. I then focused on training in the technology, intelligence, and analytical aspects of investigations for an additional 2-year period and was awarded certification in all aspects of online data collection. I have aided licensed private investigating agencies, private individuals and families, law enforcement agencies, and the judicial system, both in a voluntary and paid status as an investigative analyst. My strength lies in researching, gathering, and analyzing potentially crucial data evidence pertaining to an assortment of situations such as missing persons, persons of interest in criminal activities, insurance fraud, government waste and abuse, sexual exploitation of minors, sex trafficking, child pornography, drug trafficking, suspicious death investigations, offshore money laundering, and non-custodial child abductions, just to name a few. At present, I digress from revealing or sharing the cases that I have worked on for the simple fact that several are still in an active status, and I want to protect the integrity of the cases, and as for the resolved cases, I want to protect the privacy of the surviving individuals and their families that were affected emotionally, mentally, and physically from their experiences. I am of the firm belief that every human being that is harmed or their lives are taken from them with deliberate and malicious forethought by another human being, regardless of the victim's race, age, color, sex, national origin, physical or mental disabilities, religion, lifestyle choices, or addictions, Each and every one of them all deserve respect and a voice. In closing, I consider it an honor and a privilege to have an active working relationship with MJA and look forward to co-hosting. Until next time, back to our MJA Inc. Investigations podcast, the series Deep in the Woods.
This is to our listeners. MJA is changing our podcast a lot, trying to make it better and more enjoyable for our listeners. We do have some exciting episodes coming up, and some of the episodes will have our new co-host on the air. Until then, that's the end of our MJA News Spot Part 8, October 2018, MJA Operations. I have a quote for our listeners. You do not write your life with words. You write it with actions. What you think is not important. It is only important what you do. Patrick Ness. I want to thank our listeners. Always remember, folks, if you ever get bored with nothing to do, just take a walk deep into the woods. You might be surprised what you might find. My name is Mark, and I was your host for tonight's podcast, and I would like to say good night from Plattsburgh, New York.
Yourself. You are someone else. Remember, you are not yourself. You are someone else.
Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, and the dream that you dreamed of once in a lullaby. Somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly, and the dream that you dreamed of, dreams really do come true, come true, come true, come true.
I've had such a curious dream, said Alice, and she told her sister, as well as she could remember them, all these strange adventures of hers, that you have just been reading about.